Thank you all so much for joining us. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we do start. As I said, this is going to be recorded, is currently being recorded, so we will upload it onto our YouTube channel following this shortly. So you can come back and watch it or send it on to anyone else. If you do, so yeah, feel free to turn your cameras on or pop questions in the chat. If you do have any questions throughout the session, we will have an opportunity for Q&As at the end. You can also feel free to pop them in the chat. Myself and Steph, my colleague, will be sort of moderating the chat here, and we'll be able to answer them or circle back to them at the end. So thanks very much for that. Just before we do start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional lands from which I'm joining you from today. I'm joining you on the lands of the Wamba Pirripa people in the beautiful Deniliquin, New South Wales. We are on the beautiful Colletch River, which you can see there in that image. It's one of the favourite places here where I get to live. I get to spend a lot of time down there, and it's a really special part of the country that connects us to many other small communities along that river, and then into the Murray River, which of course connects us to many other communities across Victoria, New South Wales, and into South Australia. So I'd just like to thank the traditional owners of this land and the lands of which we're connected to through those waterways, and thank them for their continued custodianship over millennia. And I'd like to pay my respect to elders past, present, and those emerging, and thank them for the wonderful care for country that they have shared with us. Feel free to pop in the chat where you're joining us from today. I do love to see the broad spectrum of country from which you are all joining us. I know Steph, who's speaking later in the piece, she's joining from Cubby country, which is on the Sunshine Coast up in Queensland. Beautiful country up there as well. So just a bit of background for you all on the Heywire Grants program. I'm not sure how familiar you all are for those of you that are joining us today. But this partnership program is with the wonderful ABC team who've been running the ABC Heywire Youth Storytelling Competition for more than 25 years now. So a long time that they've been running that. The young people who told their stories more than 25 years ago have now, become some of the leaders in regional and rural Australia, and have gone on to do some pretty wonderful things. And those stories have continued to shape some of the storytelling at ABC. Really beloved program, but we began our partnership with them about 14 years ago. So the ABC Heywire Youth Innovation Grants program was born. ABC Storytelling Competition is a national competition where young people aged 16 to 22 submit stories about their life lived in rural, regional and remote Australia. A winner selected from each of the different ABC regions across the country, and their stories are told all across the ABC platform. So they have their stories about their lived experience growing up shared across ABC News, Landline. You quite often see the stories popping up in digital media as well. Not only that, but those young people actually get to go to Canberra for a week-long leadership summit. So they're flown in from all across the country to Canberra, where they spend the week talking about issues that matter to them. So they get to have a chat about, what's great growing up in country Australia, perhaps what's not so great, and then work together to come up with some ideas about how they could address those issues. Previously, they've come up with some fully formed ideas, and then we've invited Australian communities to adopt or adapt those ideas, but we're changing things up a little bit this year. Over those 13 years of Heywire, what we've found is that the most impactful projects that we have funded have been those ones where the communities themselves have had the agency to develop their own ideas, create their own solutions in community, and let young people have their own voices in community. So in this year, instead of Heywire winners creating ideas, they have just proposed questions. And so what we're doing with the Heywire Grant Round this year is proposing that community groups such as yourselves and young people come up with your own solutions and ideas about how these Heywire issues can be addressed at a local level. So that's where we're at the moment. These issues are then forming the basis of our annual Heywire grant round, and we're inviting communities to apply for grants of between $500 and $10,000 to design a solution that works for your community and addresses one of these 6 issues. You can see now we're in our 14th year of the Heywire Youth Innovation Grants round. We've funded out about $1.8 million in grants just in Heywire across those years. It's grown from sort of quite a small granting pool. We now have about between $100,000 and $150,000 a year, and a huge platform of different projects all across Australia, and some youth projects that we've been able to support. So it's a very unique grant program. You see a lot of grants where you're required to have a shovel-ready project. So you need to have everything sorted out, and the details all planned before you apply for funding. I'd suggest that that's typically what most of us are used to, and what we see is expected in granting. Heywire is a bit different in that we are really kind of funding ideas, and we're encouraging communities to come up with projects and ideas in response to the very current issues that are being identified at the Heywire Challenge. So very different grant program. I think it's pretty special. I think it's pretty wonderful. I've been lucky enough to see the impact of those 226 youth projects across Australia, and I can certainly say that it really is quite empowering for young people, and a really unique opportunity for them to be able to see the change that they can create in their community. Hoping that this webinar is going to shed a bit of light on the nuances of the grant program this grant round, and of course we'll be available beyond it if you still have any questions. Some key information for this grant round. So as I said, you can apply for between $500 and $10,000 per grant across all across Australia. There is a total grant pool of at least $100,000 available to be shared across Australia. So it's at least sort of 10, depending on the amount of funding, but likely quite a few more than that, depending on where we land at the end of the grant round. Expressions of interest, which is the very first deadline that I want you to note, will close at 5 p.m. on the 11th of March. So you've got just a bit over a month to get those expressions of interest in. If you are then invited to submit a full application, you have the whole month of April to submit those applications. So that will come later if you are lucky enough to have your expression of interest shortlisted. So the date that I do want you to note there is the 11th of March. In terms of when your project can be delivered, as I said, because Heywire doesn't necessarily have shovel-ready projects, we actually give you a little bit longer to deliver your projects. So you get 18 months. So funding will be announced in July. So you'll have sort of the July to December 2027. So you can kind of look at the rest of this calendar year and all of next year for project delivery. Eligible locations, again, Heywire, we're a little bit different to a lot of the grant programs at FRRR, and we actually have a broader scope of where you can have your projects delivered. We include Canberra, Hobart and Darwin as eligible locations, but the other capital cities are ineligible. So Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth and Brisbane. If you fall into like the geography of those capital cities, your project is ineligible, but we do accept projects from nearby communities where they're technically classed as metro locations. So the likes of Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, Wollongong, Newcastle are all eligible, even though they aren't for a lot of other FRRR grant programs. So if you're in doubt about the eligibility of your location for your project delivery, feel free to get in touch with us about that one. So into the details of how the 2026 Heywire grant program will work this year. So we are at the stage now where we have had the 2026 Heywire issues announced. The wonderful 36 young people from all across Australia who were at the Canberra Summit last year did all the hard work designing the provocation questions for you, and you can now see them on the FRRR website. So we have the 6 issues that we want you to create some solutions for. The point we're at now is the expressions of interest. So they're now open, and we're, throwing it out there to community and to young people to, have a look at those 6 issues, decide which one really resonates with you as a community or with the work that you currently do, and design a bit of a project pitch for how you see that project being delivered in your community, and how you see yourself or your community solving that issue locally. Once those EOIs are submitted, we will have a shortlisting process. So there'll be a couple of weeks of a shortlisting process there, and then you will either be informed that you have been shortlisted, and in which time you'll be invited to submit a full application, or if yours wasn't shortlisted, perhaps we will be able to see if there's other grant programs we can suggest instead, or we can revisit again in the next grant round. Once those applications come through, the grants will be assessed by a youth assessment panel. So our youth assessment panel is made up of Heywire winners from previous years, and they're the ones that make the final decisions on which projects to fund. So while if you're shortlisted, it's still a competitive grant round, but that's the stage when you'll be expected to put in a full application there. So that's it at a glance. I'm going to throw over to Steph here for a moment to have a bit of a chat about sort of what we are actually looking for in regards to Heywire projects and what makes a good Heywire project.
Thanks, Lauren. So essentially what we're looking for with Heywire in particular is, you can probably guess, projects that are delivered by young people for young people. So this is really the heart of the Heywire Youth Innovation Grants. There's no other grants like them nationally, and so we really want to be elevating the voices of young people with this grant round in particular. So we're also looking for projects that really meet a need for the local community and that they're applying for. So it might be your community may have been affected by a disaster recently. There may be different organisations that are they've just started collaborating, or that have done a youth roadmap. So we want to make sure that all of the applications are a direct response to what's going on in your community, what's going on in the ground at the moment. We're also looking for some strong outcomes, and then we're also looking for what really can be provided for young people as a result of this project. At the end of your 18 months, how have young people really benefited from this grant in your community? So we also understand that youth development doesn't always happen in a vacuum, and by young people, for young people, can also involve many wonderful ways that other people are supporting young people. So that might be through mentorship or stakeholder support. So essentially, collaborative projects that benefit the whole community, that elevate young people, are really valued. All right, so that's the overview of what we're looking for. So I'm just going to take you through the kind of 4 key steps to preparing an expression of interest in EOI with your application. So we're not in this section going to go through, a nitty-gritty of what makes a good grant application. In general, with FRRR, we have many resources on our FRRR pages, on previous webinars on our YouTube about that. So what we're really wanting to do is elevate the process of Heywire and what our Heywire winners and our youth assessment panel are looking for in these applications. So the first step is to find your project team. This is the funnest part, because you get to decide who are the other wonderful humans who will be delivering this project alongside you. For FRRR's purposes as a granting organisation, we do need you to list a legal organisation, charity, non-profit, to hold the funds. So if you aren't applying as an entity yourself, as an NGO, we need you to list a legal organisation to hold the funds. So just make sure that, when you're coming up with your ideas, if you're not already connected to an organisation in your community, that you just have those conversations about, what kind of work makes sense for them, like what kind of issues or focus areas do those organisations already have, and could that overlap with the solution that you're applying for in your community? So just make sure you kind of get their yes, a tentative yes, when preparing your EOI for this reason. But the thing that you need to keep at the heart of your application and when making this ask is the how are young people going to be involved question. So the next step is to choose your Heywire issue. So these are the 6 focus areas that Lauren mentioned before. So we've got how might we help young people learn about respectful relationships and consent? How might we connect young people with development opportunities in their communities? How might we help communities connect without alcohol or drugs? How might we remove barriers and bias in healthcare for regional young people? How might we support regional communities before and after a disaster? And how might we create safe spaces where young people can connect and grow? So these are all of the wonderful questions developed by our Heywire winners that will hopefully inspire a response in terms of something that you can do in your local community. As Lauren mentioned, it's a great idea to kind of get together with a bunch of people and go like, what really resonates for our local needs at this moment in time? You'll notice that 2 of these areas, connecting without alcohol or drugs and the disaster-affected communities, don't explicitly mention young people kind of in their questioning. So if you're responding to these 2 in particular, it's important to consider that young people are still considered in that whole of community approach to your solution. So if you're responding to those 2 questions, what are you going to do to ensure that young people are invited well into that process? So these focus areas are also all on the Heywire Innovation Grants page if you want to revisit them. So the next step is designing your solution. So with an EOI, we do not expect you to be like, this is exactly what will happen. We can predict the future. We have a crystal ball. No, we don't need the nitty-gritty. What we're looking for is those high-level concepts. What would you do with the funding if you were successful? Because at the end of the day, this is still a test. This is still a pilot. So how will young people be involved? How will they be better off if this project is funded? And who actually are the young people that are going to be involved? Is it yourself? Is it others? Make sure you're making that really clear so that the Heywire winners and the youth assessment panel can kind of get that clarity on what it might look like if you are successful in getting the funding and they're successful in delivering your project. So we don't need detailed budgets or anything at this stage either. But we also don't necessarily need all these letters from government or councils saying, yes, we need it. What we want is your idea and a potential solution. So just keep in mind that the first people that will be looking at this EOI are Heywire winners. So it's other young people that'll be the first people to look through the solutions that you have. So don't feel like you need to be you need to word this in a way that's like an assignment for your teacher. It's literally just for other young people who are probably going to be just excited as you are about your solution. So this kind of resembles what the form looks like on our site. So it has these kind of 5 main questions aside from a bunch of organisational details. The first one is the project title, what it says on the tin. Just a little helpful hint for this one is that the Youth Assessment Panel love a fun, memorable project title. It's definitely not compulsory, but it's always great to refer back to when they're having those discussions. It can really help your application stand out and be elevated in discussions as well. So the next thing that you'll need is a project description. So this is kind of 500 words. What do you envision will happen? Just a classic who, what, when, where, why, how is fantastic to guide your thinking and your writing on this. The next question is about how are young people involved? So you have 300 words to answer this. Are young people involved at the early stages? Are they involved in delivery? Will they be involved potentially in some sort of evaluation if you want to involve, if you want to add that to your application as well. So just make it clear how you envision that this will happen. It can be subject to change, but just make sure you've got that thinking in place of how young people will be involved and what steps. The next question is about selecting your town. So we want to know your location, its population. On the drop down, you can select up to 4 different areas. So it might be a regional approach. That you can just choose if it's just limited to your own community or if it spreads a little bit wider. Then we just ask for a dollar amount of how much you're requesting. Again, you do not need line items. You do not need to justify why you're asking for this amount. It's just ideally to do your project well, what amount would you need between $500 and $10,000. So again, just flagging that with all of these questions that you're answering in the EOI, they will be shortlisted by the Heywire winners and then the youth assessment panel, and then go back to the Heywire winners. So again, it is a very youth-led project. You can just use clear, concise language of like what you're going to do that's very action-oriented, and that will help put your best foot forward for your application. So I will pass you back to Lauren about what happens after your EOI.
Thanks, Steph. Yeah, and just again, reiterating this. So the whole purpose of the expression of interest is that we don't want you guys to have to spend too much time, developing and writing a grant application. Let's be honest, no one wants to do that. So this really is just that high level, inspiring. What is your solution? We will put it in front of the youth who came up with the ideas, and we want them to feel inspired and really see the potential of the idea that you're coming up with. And then if you're successful, that's when we'll start to ask for that really, detailed information that you're used to. So if you get, and hopefully all of you on the call, hopefully you're feeling inspired and you have these wonderful ideas for solving these issues. And hopefully you'll get to the EOI process and have yours shortlisted. If that happens, we'll get in touch with you, and you will have from the 1st till the 30th of April to finalise your application. So this is where we are asking for that detail application. So you've passed the vibe check. The youth have said, yes, this idea, at a high level looks great. We're inspired. We think it'll create impact. The next young people who will be looking at the project are the assessment panel. They will be wanting to know the actual details. They want to know that if funded, it will be successful, that, this high level idea that you've conceived actually will work on the ground, that you have, you've looked into what the funding will support you, that $10,000 is enough to do what you say it will do. So this is where we're going to start to ask for, line items for what you'd like to spend the funding on if successful. We do want to see at this stage that kind of evidence of collaboration, or most importantly for Heywire, is that buy-in from the community and young people. So it's always a bit of trepidation about, if we fund this, will they come for young people? So that evidence that young people, are excited about the concept, and if you are proposing that you'll create a safe space for young people, that you've done a bit of a poll for young people to say yes, this is what we're looking for, or you've had opportunities for them to kind of give their feedback into what they want to see there. And then this is sort of the point where we'd like to see, what is the level of need specific to your location. So at this point, you're being assessed against other grant projects that have already passed the, we think it's going to be a great idea. And this is the stage where, you might get your project put up against another one that's quite similar or under the same banner. And we want you to, again, put your best foot forward and tell us why it's really important to your location. What are the things very specific to your location, to the young people in your community, that will, inspire the youth assessment panel to realise that that the funding would be well placed in your community, and that there is that real level of need there. So if you do get to this point, we will be providing some more detailed information, and we'll be able to support that. But just letting you know. The projects will then go to a youth assessment panel. So the youth assessment panel will make those final recommendations for funding. We love that they are previous members of the Heywire panel. They're excited to see what might come if these projects are funded. And then if successful, as I said, funds will become available in July for that 18-month project delivery. And once you've finished your project, you then have 8 weeks to finalise your project report. So a fairly sort of streamlined process there. That's kind of it in a nutshell. Hopefully this has been a bit of a useful exercise for you, and you'll be able to sort of have a better understanding of the process and kind of like what we're looking for at the 2 different stages. I do encourage you, if you need some more assistance, put our contact details there. They are, of course, on the FRRR website. Have a bit of a look through the Heywire page on the FRRR website. The other useful resource, both at this stage but particularly if you are successful in the expression of interest stage, is there's a Grantseeker resources page on the FRRR website, which is incredibly useful. It has lots of those things that we kind of talked about with the evidence of need and what we might be looking for at assessment stage. If you are a young person interested in applying, or you know of a young person or a group of young people, school council, SRC council, that type of thing, and you would like a bit of help, feel free to reach out to us. Myself, the team, Steph, we have some other team members at FRRR that are more than willing to help you. We know that even though this is kind of a bit of a different grant program, it's a wonderful opportunity for young people to really take ownership of a project in their community, and we are more than happy to support any young people who want to have a go at developing and submitting a Heywire grant application. So if you know of anyone that you think would shine at being given this opportunity, please do feel free to tap them on the shoulder, put them in touch with us, and we're more than happy to guide them through that process as well. That's it. Thank you very much, everyone. That's all the talking at you that we're going to do now. I can see some questions in the chat here. Also, feel free to pop your hand up if you do have a question. Some context around the issue: connect young people with development opportunities in their communities. Yeah, so again, kind of, that is the broad question. You can determine what that looks like in your own community. And so it could be either of those. So if it's probably more the development of like career opportunities, personal development opportunities, more so than like infrastructure development. Sorry, I realise now that you're asking that. Construction as in infrastructure. So it's more like personal development, career development, anything that enhances their well-being and personal skill set. But on noting that, there really is a fair bit of scope within this to, have a look at it and see how those issues resonate with young people in your community. And so, if you put that opportunity in front of young people and they immediately were like, yes, we see an opportunity here for, us to develop a leadership program for young people in our community. And that's kind of what development opportunities means to them is, leadership. Totally wonderful, totally fine. If it's something more, anything. It's really about how does your community and how do young people in your community see that and be able to develop and respond to it. Do we have any other questions? Yeah, so Natalie, we could definitely do something like that. I will note there is a bit of a nuance with sport and FRRR. So for us, sport in and of itself is not a charitable activity, so we can't fund projects that are for the advancement of sport. But there is a bit of a, sporting committees. I can see that there's actually an element there of that's actually using sport as a vehicle for personal development. And so in that instance, I think that there would be ways that we could look at that and say there is actually a charitable part of this, a charitable component of this that we would be able to support. So yes, we could look at, you know, if you wanted to connect young people with development opportunities, and in that case, development opportunities would be, you know, developing their leadership or developing their ability to sit on a committee at a local sporting group, definitely within scope. Naomi, yes, council would be an appropriate legal org. So we can fund councils. You know, you're a not-for-profit organisation, that's fine. Basically, any organisation that doesn't give its profit to members. So we can do council, we can do, you know, your very small community organisations. As long as you have an ABN or an incorporation number, we should be able to fund that. I do, you know, honestly encourage you to reach out if there's something very specific to. You know, this is the first time we've run the grant round like this. So obviously if there's any information that you feel like is missing or that you have questions about, feel free to reach out to myself or Steph, or just FRRR generic numbers, and someone will be able to assist you. Wonderful. Thanks so much, everyone. I'm really looking forward to some fabulous applications, and feel free to, hopefully share the word, and we'd love to see some wonderful applications from all of your communities.